There's another tropical friend. Okay,
Yeah.
here we go. Hi, Abby. All right, I guess we can get started. Um, this is another class for the School for A Course in Miracles, and today we're going to talk about Lesson 128. The world I see holds nothing that I want. And this is a good one. The spoiler alert is tomorrow's lesson is what we get after we go through this one. So I thought it'd be appropriate to show the ego's recruitment poster, and that's what you see behind me. You know, this is this tropical paradise, right? And wow, it looks really good that the world's going to do it for me, right? and uh, and so, you know, the ego sets us up, you know, to think, oh yeah, there's something in the world in that wheel of misfortune, or as Gary Renard's teachers call it, the unmerry-go-round. There's got to be something in the world that's gonna you know, bring me happiness, or some combinations of things in the world. And so it turns out, after we spend a little time and you know, look a little closer, it's actually a setup, because this is after we
Oh,
drain the ego swamp or its ocean. It's
oh,
really a little more like this.
oh.
So, you know,
Mad
once
Max 50.
once we assess the ego's, you know, deliverables, and you know, compare what it promises to what it really delivers, it's like there's a little bit of a disconnect here. So I think that's why I thought I'd, you know, add a little humor to this lesson, because this is one of these ones where, you know, he you know, like I say, the next lesson 129 is there is a world that offers what I want after this one, but right now we're just going to see that the world I see holds nothing that I want. But that takes, you know, willingness to look honestly at the ego setup and it's propaganda, and really kind of, you know, ask Holy Spirit, let's look at this together and see what it really is delivered, right? So
And 130, he keeps going. You can't have both at once.
yeah, exactly.
You
Okay,
can't have both. Nah, nah, nah.
here's the recruitment poster. Here's what's really delivered, and yet better than the recruitment poster is the real world. And right, so but we just have to pick one, and then we go beyond both the special love, special hate, and get something even better than we can imagine, right? So I'll start in reading the first paragraph. The world you see holds nothing that you need to offer you, nothing that you can use in any way, nor anything at all that serves to give you joy. Believe this thought, and you are saved from years of misery, from countless disappointments, and from hopes that turn to bitter ashes of despair. No one but must accept this thought as true if he would leave the world behind and soar beyond its petty scope and little ways. And I think I mentioned this in Sally's class earlier today, but you know, because we went over this workbook lesson too, and in the beginning of Sally's class and online. And anyway, the petty scope phrase stuck out, yeah, for, you know, for me today. And I was thinking, well, to look at the world of the very small, we have a microscope, and to look at the world of the very large, we have a telescope. But where we think we're at, somewhere in the middle of the microcosm and the macrocosm, ego uses its petty scope to make everything a grievance of one sort or another, right? And so we peer about through our petty scopes to see all the things that, you know, ego misinterprets as upsets, instead of seeing them as neutral in a neutral world with neutral bodies and neutral stuff, and stuff that we've given all the meaning that it has for us. So
Can you put the nice picture back on? I like thinking I have a real choice here.
okay, there we go, how's that? Is that better? We do have a real choice, yeah. Okay, this will be the teaser. We have to just get through this lesson first, though. Okay, we have to finish our dinner before dessert.
Look at Dave. Dave is raring to say something. Are you, Dave?
Uh, well, I guess one thing one thing I did want to say was was, you know, I'm looking at this tropical paradise behind Bruce here, and you know, if I visualize myself kind of digging my toes into the sand and feeling the sand and everything, and listening to the waves and all of that, it's still my perception, my choice, and my perception about how I perceive that right there.
Absolutely.
I could be depressed, walking along the beach. I could be depressed, and perceive all of that entirely differently. So it you know, the wrappings don't matter.
Exactly.
But the teacher sure does.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, we tend to glamorize certain things in our memories. And for example, if I were to go back to the few days I spent in Bora Bora about 30 years ago or whatever it was, and Moraes, like, there were things that annoyed me there just as much as anywhere else, you know, and you know, it's the same kind of deal, right? I mean, it like you say, Dave, it's not about the form. It's always about the choice of teacher in the mind, and whether or not we're, you know, making a grievance or a holy instant out of anything. Yeah.
I just remembered I was in Bali and I had one of the worst times of my life.
Really?
In
Yeah.
Bali, in paradise. I had to go find a crazy Australian to talk me out of it. Whatever
Okay.
I was going to do, it was something crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Wapnick has a great take on this on one of his CDs. He talks about, you know, the planet in this world is a dilapidated cruise ship where they show the same bad movie every night, and they give them the same stale popcorn every day. It's the same meal, sometimes burnt, sometimes undercooked, and Jesus is over in a little, in Louisiana we call it a pirogue, a little skiff over on the side, waving his hand, you know, hoping somebody will come over his way. It's a beautiful image.
And he's probably got a sumptuous banquet of true, you know, delicious.
Yeah, nothing but the best, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The other metaphor I like that's kind of similar to that is, you know, we're struggling at Mount Everest with pitons and carabiners and, you know, all the base camps and everything, and just, you know, fighting every inch of the way, you know, against the elements. And Jesus is in his climate controlled escalator over here, you know, say, hey, over here, you know, you could try this approach, you know. It's a much nicer ascent. Anyway, but yeah, it's all a matter of which teacher, isn't it?
It's starting to sound like Queen for a Day, where you know, who has the worst story? Look at Judy. She's like, yeah. And then you get the washing machine and all the dozen roses. Dave, are you too young for that? Do you know Queen for a Day?
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, okay.
I never watched it much though. It just seemed, even then it seemed too soapy, soap opera-ish for me.
I mean, I was aware of it. I might have watched it once or twice.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I'm older than you think.
Oh, okay. Kid in the group.
So any other comments on that first paragraph? Years of misery saved just by hopping over on the boat that Stephen was telling us about, where Jay's the skipper. Disappointments, hope that turns to bitter ashes of despair. Of course, the bitter ashes kind of look like that other photo with the desert. The other thing that I was kind of reminded of when I got on Pixabay and found these two photos real quickly was you know, Ken Wapnick says, you know, when you discover you're in a desert, the thing to do is leave. And I think that's kind of like noticing when you're not at peace. It's like, oh yeah, what was I thinking? I could have had peace instead of this. Yeah. But you know, it seems like we have to come at it from all these different angles until we learn to generalize and try a whole bunch of different seeming solutions in the world and permutations of things that we think are going to make our lives work on the level of form, until we start realizing, you know, there's really nothing in this world at face value that is going to do it for me. Unless I choose a different teacher, I'm going to keep coming at this in a way that's never going to work. It's a seek but not find proposition. Countless disappointments.
And you might want to note, I'm sure the ladies already noted, but this is the second time in the history of School for A Course in Miracles meetings that we've had more guys than ladies.
Oh, wow.
Might be.
Not that I'm into form or anything. Go back to your desert.
Okay. So anyway, did anyone want to read the second paragraph?
I'll read, Bruce.
Okay.
The other thing I was thinking about when you mentioned periscope, I thought of periscope.
Yeah.
The ego is really good at working its pity, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Poor me, victimhood.
Exactly.
Each thing you value here is but a chain that binds you to the world, and it will serve no other end but this. For everything must serve the purpose you have given it, until you see a different purpose there. The only purpose worthy of your mind this world contains is that you pass it by without delaying to perceive some hope where there is none. Be you deceived no more. The world you see holds nothing that you want.
Any thoughts on that, Sally?
Well, my husband and I used to travel down to Ken's workshops from Ashland, and we did that because we realized that we had traveled around the world a lot, so we'd gotten that out of our system. So there wasn't anything more that we really wanted except to sit at the feet of, you know, someone who had mastered this course. So. So there is something I guess I want in this world, and I guess it's enlightenment, but I'm not going to get it in this world. I'm going to get it from within, somewhere within. So
Yeah.
It's you know, every now and then you say, well, you know, we should take a cruise. I think, oh no, I don't want to get on a cruise.
No.
Like hell to me, you know. Let's go to Wapner's workshop. Yeah.
Not today, maybe, anyway, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
This is Jesus' version of Aretha Franklin's, is it Chain of Fools? He goes on with chain a lot in this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anything else on that, Sally, that jumped out for you? No? Okay. One thing that grabbed me was the only purpose worthy of your mind this world contains is that you pass it by without delaying to perceive some hope where there is none. The pass it by phrase reminded me of Persa's Gospel of Thomas in Gary Renard's second book, which has a number of corrected sayings from the Gospel of Thomas. And I haven't memorized any of them except one, which is a really terse 2-word saying that I really like, and it's be passersby. And if we can remember that, it's like, you know, it's kind of like the neti, you know, it's like, it's not this, it's not that, it's not that. When all the little ego coins and the wheel of misfortunes keep flipping over from special love to special hate, and you know, we keep spinning the un-merry-go-round wheel, and nothing really seems to do it, whether it's a cruise or sitting at the feet of the master or whatever, like you were saying, Sally. It's like, oh yeah, there must be something beyond all of those externals that's going to do it. So I just need to pass them by. This too shall pass. And, you know, not to have, you know, any kind of condemnation, but just really an appreciation for everything then becomes a symbol for a way to get back to the mind.
Another song, Walk On By. Who sang that?
Oh yeah.
Dionne Warwick.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Very good.
Ta-da.
Walk on by.
You win the
Foolish,
trip to tropical
pride. Foolish pride. Walk on by.
Exactly.
Since I got that right, I just wanted to say that purpose is in here 3 times. I don't know of very many paragraphs where you're going to find purpose in there. In that one paragraph, especially in a short paragraph like this. So Jesus is really kind of driving that home. And listening to Wapnick over the years, he does that over and over. Purpose is everything. And I still have an issue with remembering that in the moment, especially when it's most important to remember it, to change over, to go to decision maker and go to the Holy Spirit's thought system. Rather than where I usually am in ego's thought system. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, as you're saying that, I was thinking one of the things that I find helpful is when I'm not at peace is to kind of imagine, you know, metaphorically, okay, I've dropped Jesus's hand and picked up a sword. And so now I'm gonna forge a connection in my mind to doing that, and then remember, well, what's the purpose? Well, the purpose of holding Jesus' hand is like, because I'm clueless and I need all the help I can get. And the purpose of picking up the sword is I still want to fight ego's battles. I still want to figure out some way of making the dream work, and I don't want to pass by the illusion and see it as that. So yeah. So yeah, purpose is, like you say, is everything, and that's so important to remember, isn't it? The world we see holds nothing that we want. Anybody for number 3? Judy?
Sure, I will.
Go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
Escape today the change you place upon your mind when you perceive salvation here. For what you value, you make part of you as you perceive yourself. All things you seek to make your value greater in your sight limit you further, hide your worth from you, and add another bar across the door that leads to true awareness of yourself. For what you value, you make part of you, and ultimately, you make your identity. So if we value the world in our minds, we end up identifying with it.
Yep.
And become it. Guilt and all. Let me see. The things you seek to make your value greater in your sight. Who, me? Yep.
The moi question. Yeah, and that's everything we do. That whether it's, you know, a special love relationship or a special hate relationship, which we have with just about everything, you know, down to the, you know, the smallest grain of sand or the, you know, the biggest ocean. You know, we have special love hate relationships with everything, but those further anchor our little self identity, one way or another, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the bar across the door, I know Ken says something about it in his commentary, but I can't remember.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it just seems, it's quite the image for me. I don't know why.
For some reason, the door, saying door and Ken reminds me of how in one of his lectures he says that there's like an invisible vacuum cleaner over the door, and whenever people left his lectures, all the insights that were shared and appreciated would just immediately get sucked out of people's minds, you know, and that, you know, kind of a testament to the resistance we have to learning the course. But I think we're slowly but surely overcoming that resistance.
I have a lot of that.
Oh.
I can read a whole lesson, and then, you know, half an hour later it's, what was the title of that darn thing? Yeah.
It's a resistance overcomers club, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Resistance Anonymous here. Yeah.
Sometimes when I was at the foundation, after 2 hours of Ken, you wanted to stand under that vacuum cleaner. You wanted it to suck that right out of you, so you could go out and be normal again.
I bet.
That's good.
Let me linger here a second or two. Make sure
I think there's still some left. There we
He
go.
seems
Got
to
it.
pull no punches, right?
I see people scrambling for the doorway.
Exactly.
They all wanted a beer.
Oh, that's good.
I was reflecting on what Judy was saying, and you know, sort of superficially, he's talking about special love relationships. We go after things we think we want because they're going to make us feel better. But then that idea of giving you value greater in your eyes, making your own self-esteem boosted a little bit. And then certainly the real clincher is the way my self-esteem gets boosted is when I prove you're the bad guy, when all those special love relationships fall apart. and your guilt comes to the surface, then I know I'm more valuable than you are because you got way more guilt than me. Yeah.
You're the guilt champion, royalty for the day, right?
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a comparative, contest in the egos thing of, oh, well, has everybody seen the Four Yorkshiremen? It's a Monty Python skit. If you haven't, Google Four Yorkshiremen, and it wasn't part of the regular TV show, but it's a skit that they did where you get the impression in the setting, and they're kind of in this like a nightclub or lounge, setting, and they're all kind of sitting around. They're smoking jackets, that kind of, well-to-do, and reflecting on how their younger lives weren't quite so easy, and pretty soon it becomes this race to the bottom of one downsmanship, and it's pretty hilarious. But that's the ego's game in a nutshell. It's like, oh, well, you were lucky, you had a box to live in, oh, you were lucky. Yeah, we would have loved to have a gutter to live in, that kind of thing. Anyway, if you I just find it hilarious. If you your mileage may vary, but anyway, but I thought it was a pretty good lampooning of the ego's strategy of not only comparison, but also martyrdom and escalation. Yeah. Let's see, anyone for number 4?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Let nothing that relates to body thoughts delay your progress to salvation, nor permit temptation to believe the world holds anything you want to hold you back. Nothing is here to cherish. Nothing here is worth one instant of delay and pain, one moment of uncertainty and doubt. The worthless offer nothing. Certainty of worth cannot be found in the worthlessness.
So what does that mean in your immediate response to
Well, there's always temptation. Constantly. And it's so easy to get caught up in an idea and then go, oh yeah. The same old thing. Everything becomes the same useless endeavor in a lot of ways in these belief system of the one that the world holds.
Yeah, it seems like the way to turn that around, of course, that is being offered to us is the shared interest. We can do the exact same thing, but with like Ken Wapnick said in one of his talks, make it about the other person, and think of ways that you can make someone feel peaceful and included and but included in the real essence of what we are, and which is really nothing more than saying, okay, I need to stop condemning and looking at all my micro grievances and mini judgments and and the little minutia that my ego likes to make big deals out of, and then realize that behind the special hate, devil in the details catalog, there's a real essence that I'm missing out on if I stay fixated on that stuff.
Yeah, I find that a lot of times you get caught up in gossip, like the neighbors. I just moved to a new place and we got all different neighbors, so I'm learning about all the neighbors and all the gossip, and it goes down one road where they're talking about so and so and he's so bad and she did this and he did that. But then when you just switch it a little and just throw something in where you add some kind of like, well, they're having a lot of trouble because of drug problems, whatever, and it just switches things, and then it helps people to, when you see them that way, then other people start seeing them that it's just a cry for help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Suffering.
Yeah, a compassionate response. It doesn't mean that we ignore the facts of what's going on in the world. It's just we bring to question ego's interpretation of things,
Mm-hmm.
which is always some kind of condemnation, and making difference is a big deal. And when the differences are no longer a big deal, then it's like, oh, well, we're all included. We're all in the same boat. We're all fighting the same hard battle, and therefore we can afford to be, truly charitable, which isn't, giving on a level of form necessarily, although it might reflect that way sometimes. But it's always, giving of the spirit that we all have, that is, through us and not from us. Yeah.
A few years back, I was working in a shuttle company up in Rapid City, and the guys would all sit around, and as soon as one of the drivers walked out with a client, they'd start talking about him. Me too. And I knew this wasn't good for my soul. And so I started praying about it, and I didn't know, it was like, at least I didn't have to say anything. So I got quiet for a while. And then the ultimate thing was, I got really clever. I got up, and as I was leaving with my client, I turned to all the drivers and I said, "You can talk about me now."
That's fun. That's great. I love it. That's good.
I don't think I gossiped anymore after that.
That's really good.
Did that shut things down?
What's that?
What's that?
Did that shut things down?
I know. Well, I left. I'm sure they still talked about me.
Probably more after that comment.
Yeah,
Maybe.
no kidding.
Maybe. Oh, that's funny. I like the approach though, Tim. That's really original.
It was a Jesus moment for sure. I don't know where I ever came up with that.
What we've been showing kind of reminds me of that Mr. Rogers movie, and there was 2 documentaries that came out. One with Tom Hanks, and there was another one, but I think just a little before that. And in the one before that, he's quoted as saying something to the effect of, I never want to, propagate or, further any untruth or any derogatory comments. And now, obviously, on the level of form, denying factual things is one thing, but propagating the condemnation, propagating, the sinfulness, of course, we'll talk about if we can see my brother sinless, that's really what's being asked. Not don't see a body, that's pretty hard to not see bodies, but you can see the innocence there if with training or untraining. We have to untrain our egos, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Potty trained.
Petty potty training with our pettiscope and our pettiscope and our potty scope.
Oh my!
And then we'll just be like putty in Jesus' hands, right? Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Okay, how about the next paragraph? Any volunteers?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Today, we practice letting go all thought of values we have given to the world. We leave it free of purposes we gave its aspects and its phases and its dreams. We hold it purposeless within our minds and loosen it from all we wish it were. Thus, do we lift the chains that bar the door to freedom from the world and go beyond all little values and diminished goals.
And thoughts on that you might have? Abby?
Yeah, the freedom from the world. It's back to the purpose again.
Yeah.
Purpose is purposeless within our minds, and then little values and diminished goals. It sounds like that dilapidated cruise ship.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? To me, the values and the purposes and the goals are all a package deal. It's an all-included all included cruise vacation to hell from the ego's itinerary. All expenses paid, exactly. Yeah. So all the values that bind us to a condemning worldview, and the tiny, all the seemingly tiny and seemingly large grievances that seem to come at us but are really coming from us, become the curriculum that Holy Spirit says, okay, let's look at all this stuff together, and I'll get you on the real cruise, and you won't end up on the desert that's got no facilities. So anyway,
I was thinking about this in terms of we're started looking at chapter 9, and certainly the recurring theme of sacrifice that we're really caught up in believing Jesus is asking us to give up the few crumbs we have that make us feel good. I mean, that's what it sounds like it's saying here. If you just pop this book open, if you were a good worldly person, you close in a heartbeat. Oh, I'm not going to give up my cigarettes and my coffee and my whatever it is I'm addicted to. But I mean, it's not, from his point of view, it's not that kind of sacrifice.
Right. Yeah. It's another example of, it's so easy to get into level confusion unless we're paying attention and realizing it's never about the form, it's always about the mind. And the only thing we're asked to sacrifice is being upset by things that haven't affected our real being, huh?
Yeah, it reminds me of, I guess it might be 100, it might be 1,000 heartbreaks that I've had with this course. First time I read, not one thing in this world is true. I had to stop, and it took me aback, and I thought about the love with my granddaughter. In 16, it seems to be a perfect relationship. In 16 years, we've had about 90 seconds of discomfort. Except for that, just unconditional love, laughs and smiles, poignant stories. Not one that when I read that wasn't true, and I looked at that part about my granddaughter, it broke my heart, because I knew I had like Tim's been saying here lately, I've heard him say several times, there was a period after that sentence, not one thing, because it says it at least 2 more times when I've seen it, and the thing that gets me past it is that at the beginning of the workbook, it says, you have to change your perception and change your mind about everyone and everything in the world. That's your walking papers. So you have to step back from everything and take another look at it. I found another place in the course recently which really, really helped me, that every loving thought is a real thought. Every loving thought is real, is a reality in eternity. That's the wonderment of the course is, if I get a heartbreak, I always find some hope. Jesus has done this in such a way that as I travel through these words and as I live this course more and more, I find the answers. I ask to be taught, I pay close attention, and eventually I get gentle smiles, and I get a lead that seems to be taking me to the home that I never left. Thank you.
Yeah. We do get those cues and reminders that the what's eternal really is true, and so all the loving thoughts and the kindnesses that you've exchanged with your granddaughter, those are true. To the extent that they reflect what doesn't change, right? So.
And I think ultimately, the good news is I don't have to give up my relationship with my granddaughter.
Yeah.
I have to give up believing it's only with my granddaughter that I can have this.
Bingo. Yeah.
I mean, that I can actually have that experience with people I don't like. That's pretty profound if that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, because there's my favorite line in the course is, the holiest place on earth is where an ancient hatred what has been.
Become a present love. Yeah. I thought of that line on New Year's Day this year, when they have an annual peace hike in the little town on the Oregon coast I live, and it's commemorating the indigenous people and so forth, and it's really basically a lot of the local indigenous people come out and honor the rest of the people in the area that acknowledge in a spirit of inclusion everyone, and so it's like, Yeah, that's kind of cool. But the inclusion has to include everyone for it to work. And usually, our egos want to leave someone or something or some group of people out, and that's the catch, right? No. Anyone else? Before we go on?
I'll read 6. Is that
Okay,
all right?
sure.
Pause and be still a little while and see how far you rise above the world when you release your mind from chains and let it seek the level where it finds itself at home. It will be grateful to be free a while. It knows where it belongs, but free its wings. It will fly in sureness and in joy to join its holy purpose. Let it rest in its creator, for to be there to be restored to sanity, to freedom, and to love. Yeah, it almost sounds like he says on the first line, I get like the world and the body sort of is the first thing that we got to get by. And then it says when you release your mind from that, it's like the second shield, the guilt that is within our mind. We can look at that, sort of like the second shield of living, I would think. And then once we can get by that, we can start to seek the level where it finds itself at home.
Yeah, yeah. That word home is such a powerful
Yeah.
symbol, isn't it, for that place in the mind we never left. I'm reminded of lesson 182, that's about the little child that just wants just a few minutes, just a few instants of, remembering that feeling of home. Yeah. That it's like almost like a spiritual nostalgia for something that we know that we never left, but we can't quite place our finger on it. We can't quite, define it in any way, which is because it's really undefinable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, once we can see the guilt, we can be grateful to be free a while.
Right. Right.
Because we go from the outer trying to fool us, and then we go to the inner where the guilt tries to overcome us. And when we can recognize that, we can feel free. We can feel free and get the wings on.
Yeah, and we need Holy Spirit's help every step of the way, because on our own, left to our own devices, we're gonna first not ever go back into the mind, because we're gonna make it all about what's outside of us and use that as our of scapegoats, and then once we broach that outer defense, ego kicks in its heels again and says, "Oh, I'm not going there because that's where all the guilt is," but it doesn't know that it's unfounded now that it's no longer unconscious guilt. It still thinks it's unfounded, or he doesn't realize it's unfounded until we look at it with Holy Spirit and sees. It's kind of like the reframe. If we think in terms of our separate self as being pulled off as fait accompli, then it's like, oh yeah, you have every reason to be fearful and sinful and guilty, because from the ego's perspective, checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. You pulled it all off, but from the Holy Spirit's perspective, it's like, no, zoom back out. Not even on the level of form, there's that movie called The Powers of 10 where, it shows somebody lying on a beach blanket next to a lake, and then they zoom the camera out 10 times, and then you realize, oh, well, there's the shore of Lake Michigan or something like that. And then you zoom out even further and it's, oh, here's the, maybe, a few powers of 10, here's all the Great Lakes, and next zoom out, it's the whole planet. And pretty soon you're, spanning, the solar system and multiple galaxies. But it doesn't take very long. You don't have to go very far before you lose sight of the little less self that you think you are. But if we can reframe that little less self to include everyone, even just, for a moment, it's like, oh, we can go past the whole galactic thing and go back to our real self, which, Holy Spirit says, that's the self that I'm trying to remind you of, the capital S self that includes everyone. And from that perspective, A, nothing happened, and B, the guilt, wasn't which seemed to be part of that, wasn't there either. So you're off the hook, and so is everyone else. But we have to look at all the specifics. We have to look at all that desolate landscape of the ego's recruitment poster, and see it. It's like, oh, well, there's nothing there. There's nothing there that I want.
We got the Holy Spirit helps us realize that, yeah, we are in a desert.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Jesus was having a particularly rough time with Helen at this point. Like in that first line in paragraph 6, pause and be still a while. The original version in the urtext was, sit the hell down and shut up for a minute. You can see that. But that wasn't very Jesus-like, so he reworded it.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, maybe not quite those words, but yeah.
It was the gist.
Exactly, really. Yeah. Be still.
I sometimes hear that in myself.
You too.
You know? Yeah, me too.
Is the two voices on the cartoons with the angel and the devil on the shoulder, kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
The nice part about the Holy Spirit, though, the angel in that symbol, is that there's never any coercion going on. It's always like, yeah, whenever you're ready, That's usually one of the tip-offs, is that, the ego's like, okay, you got to do this, you're obligated, and you got to make this sacrifice, as Tim was talking about. The whole idea of sacrifice is really, crucial to the ego's whole propaganda package. Its whole recruitment campaign is, it's like, okay, well, if you suffer, then you're gonna beat God to the punch, and you won't have to worry about his punishment, because you will have taken care of it. And then when God comes along and finally catches up with you, you can say, oh, well, I took care of it, God. You could move along. There's other people you can attend to that need to be punished.
And if you have a problem finding him, I can help you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh, I've got a copy of your list of bad guys. I've been carefully annotating and cross-referencing, right? For years, millennia, really. Anybody for 7?
I'll try it.
Okay.
So he says to Helen, give your mind rest, damn it. 3 times today. Give it a rest. And when your eyes are opened afterwards, you will not value anything you see as much as when you looked at it before. Your whole perspective on the world will shift by just a little, and every time you let your mind escape its chains. The world is not where mind belongs, and you belong where it would be, and where the mind goes to rest when you release it from the world. Your guide is sure. Open your mind to him. Be still and rest.
Nice. Reflections, Tim, on that?
Not a whole lot I can say at that point.
Really?
I'm trying to follow his advice. Sit down, Tim, and shut up.
There's a lot of depth to that, isn't there? Yeah. Yeah. As you're reading that, I was thinking, but it's that whole desert paradise thing, that if we just look at the ego's desolation without condemnation, it's like it's nothing. It's a neutral. It's a non-thing from the Holy Spirit's perspective. We've made enormous big deals out of the tragedies. Earlier today, I was reflecting on a quote that I heard years ago that I thought was kind of funny. That was Mark Twain saying, "There's been a lot of tragedy in my life, and some of it actually happened." And then of course the Holy Spirit's rebuttal to that is, well, there actually hasn't been any tragedy in your life. What you call your life, because none of it happened. but anyway, be that as it may, it's yeah.
In line 3, I almost said instead of perspective, I almost said purpose. Your whole purpose on the world will shift by just a little.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, it doesn't mean that we don't eat and we don't, and we have our problems, and we have misunderstandings, but it's
Yeah, exactly.
purpose we put into it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, with a different teacher, all the seeming adversities and challenges, of which there are, you know, countless in the ego's never-ending catalog, as Gilda Radner, as Rosanna Dana says, it's always something, right?
Yeah.
To which Gene Bogart's rebuttal that I put in side by side in one of the chapters of my second book was, it's always nothing. and that meaning that, you know, to the Holy Spirit, it's like, well, yeah, you need to look at it, but, you know, bring it to me and let's put it on the altar of the mind, and we'll see that the special love hate that you've made out of this particular annoyances or aggravations of the desert you think you're in the moment, brought to that light, take all the suffering away. You might have this, you know, there may still be, you know, bodily sensations or things that the personal self goes through the motions of doing on the level of form, but if our mind is beginning to be associated with Holy Spirit's thinking, it seems like there's a greater ease in being able to just say, yeah, and there's another way of looking at this. You know, I don't have to identify with this and make that my identity. I could realize that I can be with the people I'm with and be kind and help them not make a big deal, which is really my call for love. And don't make it a big deal either. Yeah.
Lynn and I we've kind of avoided, well, we did a little bit, doing wills, power of attorney, dealing with practical stuff before the proverbial crap hits the fan. And especially living in a building full of 100 seniors, it could hit the fan. I mean, you know, it will eventually hit the fan, but I mean, hopefully it'll be a gradual, very gradual process. But we knew we had to sit and meditate before we took on the 5 wishes, the power of attorney, the living will, because all those not so subtle chains were going to come to the surface, and we would be tempted seriously to take them seriously.
Right.
So we did, and we got through it pretty well, but we definitely meditated first, and thinking this, you know, the whole drama of it all will shift when we come out of our quiet time.
Yeah.
It won't be so dramatic.
That's a great example, because, you know, those are the things that, you know, for a lot of people could be a, you know, pretty stereotypical sacred cow of like, I don't want to look at that topic or talk about this or you know, I don't want to go there. But if you can remember to drop the sword and take Holy Spirit's hand, and it's the same hand and just being used for a, you know, a peaceful shared purpose rather than a separate purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it really is, you know, it's a gentle thing to do for the poor person that's left.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's all about.
Exactly.
Is you're making it a whole lot easier for whoever's left to deal with it if you deal with it ahead of time, instead of waiting for, you know, chaos and crazy to get.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they're the ones that got the hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it could apply to, you know, the current situation. I try to remember when I put on my mask when I go outside and go shopping. It's like, this is not a big deal. I mean, if it, you know, even on the level of form, if it helps to save lives and makes fear less, and if of course it's my attitude about it, that whether it's a fearful attitude or not, but if I can remember to not make it a fearful thing, and to, you know, when I pass people on the street when I'm out for walks, just, you know, say hi and how you doing, and they can't see me smiling behind the mask, but I try to remember to at least be in that state of mind and inclusive, and we're all in it together, and you know, that kind of conversation when it's appropriate, kind of thing. So
Yeah, I know in our will, you know, when they pull the plug, they'll be saying, "Well, he told me to." takes the pressure off.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like funerals.
Say again, Stephen?
It's like funerals. Funerals are for the living. You know, it really has nothing to do with the person that's made the transition, or however you want to describe that.
Right.
It's the same thing with what Tim was talking about. That's for the living, you know, because you know, you seem to have made the transition where everything's okay now. So
You hope.
what do you care about all that legalese?
What, no instant promotion? Damn.
Maybe for some.
I've been
Right.
misled.
I ain't got to worry about this stuff. You got it.
I'm hoping to be with the group myself.
Really.
Well,
Really.
as you're saying that, Stephen, I was thinking, it's interesting how we just automatically, you know, the living, you know, and yet Jesus says, well, is there really life here? You know, we equate it with biological, you know, activity and all that kind of stuff, but and neurological stuff that can be registered on EKG or ECG or whatever, and it's like, there's got to be more to it than that.
Funerals are for the walking dead. The ones that haven't
There
seen
you
us
go.
die.
There you go.
Yeah. Excuse me, I misspoke.
Oh, no. I wasn't being critical. I was just noticing how easily I go there. You know, when you hear those kind of phrases, I'm trying to train my mind to you know,
Exactly.
use Holy Spirit's translation of things. You know, use little mnemonic triggers and memory jogs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Ken at one point in the Obstacles to Peace, or his comments on, there's a line that talks about people in a funeral, you know, the black robe people, you know, being glad that it's not them. They've died.
Yeah. And then there's like survivor guilt too, you know, so it's like this world is such a, you know, an opportunity to look at the craziness and see, where am I projecting that, and how can I ask Holy Spirit to turn it around and make an opportunity for kindness? You know, so even attending a funeral, it could be something that could be a real gift if, you know, real genuine compassion is there, and a spirit of inclusion, and you know, wanting people to feel as peaceful as they can, you know. Yeah.
And you know, I certainly to. I mean, Jesus would be the last one. Ken would be the last one to ask us to deny it, walk around and pretend you're not, you know, freaking out. Don't.
Right.
If you're freaking out, it's fine. Just take it to Jesus. Don't deny it.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyone for number 8? Everybody get a chance to read? Okay, well, I'll read then. Project your mind throughout the day as well. And when you think you see some value in an aspect or an image of the world, refuse to lay this chain upon your mind, but tell yourself with quiet certainty, this will not tempt me to delay myself. The world I see holds nothing that I want. And of course, the delay would be, okay, let's try permutation number 7,954 of Ego's propaganda poster recruitment strategy scenario. We haven't tried that variation yet. maybe that one will work, and the world will make me happy, you know, or some combination of juxtaposition of certain elements or whatever, phases or aspects or images. Anyway.
Yeah, there's that real alternative thing where you know, there are many roads. Perhaps you'd like to try them all.
Oh, that's a favorite of mine. It's really kind of thwack between the, you know, right between the eyes when you read that each time. And yeah, that yeah, be the first kid on your block to have tried all the pathways that lead nowhere. Right? I think that's sort of what Jesus is saying. But I also like how. And I also like how he also is in that section. He talks about, but you can't stop there. You can't stop at that lesson, and learn that, you know, the world leads nowhere. In fact, I thought about that, the real alternative while I was reading this today, because, you know, that's the point he makes, is if you stop there, you're going to get depressed. If you stay on the desert island and keep, you know, all you have is ego's interpretation, it's going to be, you know, mightily depressing. But if you then drop the sword, seeing that it has no use, pick up Jesus's hand and grab the little, what's the dory? What do you think? What do they call the little boats that take you over to the bigger boat? Anyway, and go over to his cruise. And then to the real tropical paradise, in the mind. Then then you realize that, okay, the alternative is, that real alternative is including everyone, and then everything takes on a nice glow. And I actually searched. I'm kind of running out of time, but I did search for in the online mechanism I use with the Miracle Distribution Center for the word desert and water, and I found, interestingly enough, there's 8. Excuse me, it looks like there's 9 instances of the word, or places, sections that have the word desert in it, and 10 that have water. So I think that's what it was. Anyway, and I thought that was kind of interesting, because all the desert places are ones where he's talking about, this sort of desolate kind of landscape is when we're not at peace. It's because we've taken ego's interpretation seriously, and made all of our grievances into big deals, and seen some value in an aspect or an image or a phase of things. We've looked at one of the little icons on the wheel of misfortune that's been spinning around, and we've taken the neutrality of that, the non the non-reality of it, and tried to breathe life into it, and given it some meaning and some false hope where there is none. But the real hope is beyond those special love hate, little flippable coins, or whatever you want to call it, that surround that wheel, and just say, okay, there's something real here, and Holy Spirit's going to show me that. And that's where we drop those expectations and attachments and aversions to certain outcomes, and just say, okay, if I just am truly dropping my ego investment and its valuation on what can happen and what might not happen, I might actually have a really nice time just trusting and noticing that if I truly trust, it's all going to work out. And I'm going to see in what seems to be desolate to the ego, an oasis or a paradise, the living water that he talks about, that is really just the spirit of interconnectedness, and the real intimacy and the real sharing that happens when we drop the silliness of, I can do it on my own.
Another metaphor for the many roads we could go down and crash and burn eventually.
Yeah.
This was recently, and I don't remember this being in there, but it's on page 156. It's in chapter 8.
Okay.
We looked at it, and he's talking about sickness of the body, certainly sickness of the mind. And the ego uses sickness as its best argument for your need for the ego's guidance. And then he goes, the ego dictates endless prescriptions for avoiding catastrophic outcomes. The ego dictates endless prescriptions for avoiding catastrophic outcomes. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Kind of harkens back to that Mark Twain quote, huh? There's been a lot of tragedy in my life, and some of it actually happened.
Yeah, it's almost
Really.
like it's just another mirage in the desert.
Yeah. When you really think about the things that really have been challenging, they're kind of, well, maybe they seem more than far and few between, but if we really look at the things that have happened and what hasn't happened, even on the level of form, we got through everything. We're here. We think we're here. Anyway.
I was just commenting, and this was on a very time and space kind of level. A friend of mine who's not into the course, just saying, especially at our age, 70, going on 80, etc., that it's a wonder any of us made it this far. I mean, in terms of like possibilities, the times I should be dead or by my own hand because I was doing dumb stuff. I mean, we're living on borrowed time, most of us. Borrowed from somebody, I don't know.
Wasn't it something like, it kind of reminds me of, somebody said something like, how astounding that is it that Keith Richards is still around, or something like that. Yeah.
He is the Walking Dead. Now I know that.
He gets a transfusion every year.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
He gets fresh blood every year, just like kind of like a vampire. What a great guitarist.
Oh, I know, yeah, for sure, yeah. But you know, but you know, it's so silly, isn't it, that we make such big deals out of the deserts that we think we're in. Anyway, well, like I said, there's plenty of other references, but I think I'm out of time. Thank you all. Anything else before we go?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, that was
Thanks,
good.
Bruce.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce.
everybody.
Have a great
Very
weekend.
helpful. Thank you.
Two.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.